Choice? What kind of choice?
Whether or not you're willing to play Nancy one last time.
You have to understand the pulse of horror at the time. The Elm Street franchise absolutely owned the late 80s, no matter how hard our favorite killer from Jersey and the other guy from Illinois tried to take the crown. Freddy Krueger sliced and diced and also hammed his way to heights that had never been reached for a horror villain. The creation of an undisputed horror master who worked tirelessly to get this idea off the ground. Aided by Bob Shea and New Line Cinema, the Nightmare on Elm Street films dived into the scares, fears, and nightmares that many fans could never imagine, but eventually the well started to go dry. The horror icon became very familiar, comfortable, and even rooted for. The fans and even kids loved Freddy. It was crazy. He was cracking jokes and throwing out one-liners with the veteran savvy of a full-fledged comedian. Could anyone turn the tide? Could anyone bring back the horror? Was it too late? Enter master director Wesley Earl Craven, tasked with returning to his creation to try and right the ship. The question is, what could he do to fix the mess? And would fans hate it, or would they accept their nightmares come to reality as Heather did with the entity in the form of Freddy Krueger? Let's get down to brass tacks. Welcome to my Why You Hate video series dissecting films that sometimes divides the fans, but yet causes a great discussion for people on both sides of the fence. Check out the Why You Hate playlist if you haven't already, or if you're in need for some fun and a good horror discussion, check it out again. It's not going to hurt, I promise. So as I was saying, I'm going to go over some reasons why some fans have issues with Wes Craven's New Nightmare, including multiple things that I know will be a strong debate in this community for the lovers of this film and the detractors of it. I will also attempt, if at all possible, to show how some of these issues might not hold as much weight as they seem. So get ready to play a fictionalized version of yourself and get scared out of your mind. Make sure that Rex is with you at night for protection in your bed. Always look behind you in defense when a kid is pointing and warning you. And never look in your closet at night, cause Freddy's back. Here are the reasons why you hate Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Number 1, story. The franchise had been absolutely run into oblivion by the time the 6th film crushed the hopes and dreams of Krueger fanatics. I mean, let's not turn our heads away from reality. Freddy had lost his bite, and by extension, so did the slasher movies of the day.
And you blew it! You blew it!
Fear of Elm Street was a thing of the past. The dreamscape and its former creativity was now just set pieces to gaze upon and watch Robert ham it up, laugh maniacally, and see characters do something that was so stupid. Where the hell do you go from here? Wes Craven wondered the same question. He sat down and watched all of the films. He said he couldn't make heads or tails of the story because it didn't make any sense. His solution: blow it all up.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother...
Deconstruct the mythology atom by atom. Create a story where Heather Langenkamp and many of the original film's stars and creatives play fictionalized versions of themselves.
There was a theme of how this actual movie that we had all participated in that kind of haunted our lives and, in a sense, made it like we could not be something totally different from that film ever.
Heather has to decide if she will star in Wes Craven's new film. All the while, her young son Dylan is haunted by a very old entity that has taken the form of Freddy Krueger. Freddy has entered the real world. Can Heather portray Nancy and defeat Freddy for real? I always thought that this was an interesting premise to do. When we think of meta horror, Scream gets all the attention for it, but the reality is that New Nightmare walked so that Scream could run. The basic premise of the film, with Freddy invading the real world and haunting the actors and crew responsible for the Nightmare on Elm Street films, was originally intended to be used for Nightmare 3 Dream Warriors, inspired by the movie Return to Horror High from 1987, but unfortunately, or maybe it is fortunately, the idea was rejected by the studio at the time. Now let's be real, Dream Warriors is an absolute classic, and it always will be, so I'm glad history worked the way that it did. The television show appearance in the film was inspired by an actual real encounter. According to Wes Craven, Robert Englund and I did an appearance together on public television in the San Francisco area. It was about whether this kind of film was bad for children or not. There were parents in the audience and also kids. All of the kids jumped out of their seats and started chanting, "Freddy, Freddy, Freddy." I remember looking at the show host and the parents, and they all looked horrified. The working title for this film was A Nightmare on Elm Street 7, The Ascension. However, producer Robert Shea felt he didn't want the audience to see this as another tired sequel to the series and wanted to stand on its own feet. So much so that the trailers and TV spots never showed Freddy's face on screen until after its release. The marketing for this film was good and very mysterious. Nobody knew what to expect from it, and no one knew what Krueger looked like.
Motherfucker.
I will say that that was a good choice made by Bob Shea because, again, after Freddy's dead, the franchise was in total disarray. According to the Wes Craven biography, he stated that if he didn't do New Nightmare, New Line would have pushed for a Freddy Jason movie, a crossover with the Friday the 13th series instead. He said, quote, "I think that was the card that they were going to play if they couldn't get me back for this one." When Craven accepted, New Line postponed Freddy vs. Jason and made Jason Goes to Hell in 1993 instead. Bullshit! Which ended with Freddy's glove pulling Jason's hockey mask into hell as a way to announce the upcoming crossover. In other words, it was one of the best scenes of the film. Just saying.
Just saying. Got me a 9-year stretch in Leavenworth and Alcatraz. You understand?
However, due to additional delays, another Friday the 13th movie, Jason X, in 2001 was released before Freddy vs. Jason. In other words, both of these iconic horror franchises were trying to find a way to stay afloat. The studios wanted to satisfy the audience, but ultimately, and let's be honest, there was a lot of confusion for fans, frustration, anger, no trust, betrayal, liar. Another criticism that I've heard many times, even on a live stream where we did a debate on New Nightmare and scored it by random categories, is that the film is boring. People had grown accustomed to the certain style that Elm Street films had, and this just wasn't what they had been waiting for. It's understandable for fans, and that may be you that feel like that. New Nightmare caught me by surprise when I first saw it as a kid. I was thinking, where is Freddy at? Why is Heather not playing Nancy? Where are the cool nightmare scenes? What is going on? Many questions, few answers. Let's continue with the other issues. Number 2, characters and callbacks. The events in this film revolve around Heather Langenkamp having a stalker. In real life, she really did have a stalker, and Wes Craven got her permission to weave this into the story. Heather did a phenomenal job as a young actress, juggling her career with family life. She is likable as she always is and nails it in her third Elm Street film.
Well, it was really cool to see my name in a script. But then after I digested the whole idea, then I thought, well, you know, average people are going to think that this is really about me and this is my story or something like that.
Miko Hughes, Heather's son Dylan in the movie, was no stranger to the genre. He had previously played young Gage Creed in 1989's Pet Sematary. The film has a lot of focus on Dylan throughout, and as a child actor, he was effective and did not disappoint. Other than Heather and Dylan, Julie was a character with some decent amount of screen time. Tracy Mittendorf as the babysitter and friend was fine in what was her first film role. Her character should have had more screen time and weight in the story arc. That would have made her scene with Freddy stronger in my opinion. There was the opportunity for it because no other characters have a lot of screen time. This is one aspect of the film that lacks. Sure, we get a scene or two of John Saxon, Robert Englund, Bob Shea, and even Wes Craven himself, but there is no counterbalance to Heather. Even her husband Chase only has a few scenes. For a film that has the longest runtime in the franchise, supporting characters' time is very limited, and this is a weak spot of the film. A fun fact for the movie, Winona Ryder and Drew Barrymore were both considered for the role of Julie. The actresses turned it down due to prior commitments with other projects. Ryder had previously auditioned for the role of Kristen in A Nightmare on Elm Street 3: Dream Warriors, and Wes Craven would later direct Barrymore in Scream in 1996. Interestingly enough, Angelina Jolie was also considered for the role. As with Tina's death in A Nightmare on Elm Street, Tracy Mittendorf's scene was shot in a rotating room.
Most of the people in the film had been in the original film. I didn't feel at all like I wasn't part of the group or part of the ensemble.
Amanda Weiss, who played the first victim, Tina Gray, in the original, was actually approached to be in New Nightmare before the production began. However, she passed on the opportunity after stating in a podcast interview that she was offered a very low salary. Now, I know that the idea of doing a scene like this was supposed to parallel the original film, and thereby adding to Heather's life being blurred, but in my opinion, this version of the kill is nowhere near as effective, scary, or impactful. Sure, it's cool actually seeing Freddy as he's attacking and clawing at Julie, and Dylan's reaction is decent, but it doesn't match the Tina kill in any way. The Tina kill had a great setup before she was even being attacked, plus the impact on Rod and how it set up Nancy's arc in the film, chef's kiss. Number 3, Freddy. In this film, Freddy is depicted much closer to what Wes Craven had originally intended for the character, much more menacing, much less comical, with an updated attire and appearance.
I wanted it to be something that was not quite what was in the movie.
He wanted it to be something different, something new, more bulky and more muscular. I mean, everything on it was different. It's supposed to be the real Freddy.
I felt it looked great to have him look that kind of German, sleek.
However, in 2015, before his death, he would admit he regretted changing his appearance and said, quote, "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," which was why he kept Ghostface's mask the same in every Scream movie. Portraying Freddy as an old, evil entity was interesting, and it felt fresh. It gave the viewer a chance to be introduced to Freddy again. Robert was amazing, as he usually is. This is a character that he knows through and through, even when the films go too much into the comedy. Englund has always been quite effective as a scary version of this character. In a Fangoria magazine article, Robert Englund pointed out that Wes Craven's documentary style on the film forced him, as well as other actors, to take a different approach. He said, "I was all set to play Freddy in a fairly predictable way, but when Wes came to me early in the filming and reminded me that this is a different kind of Freddy and that I could grunt, growl, groan, scream, and talk if I wanted to." Robert has said that this is his favorite movie of the Elm Street franchise, along with Freddy's makeup being his favorite look. The look of Freddy's design has a similar resemblance to Nosferatu, a symphony of horror from 1922. But as mentioned, even Wes wondered if changing the look was the right way to go. The answer to that may not be as simple as one would think. There's no doubt that the makeup was interesting, effective, and a huge upgrade from what we saw in Freddy's Dead. But there is part of me that missed the original design, specifically the versions that we saw in 1 through 4. It's 3 different looks of Krueger, and they work very well in my opinion. Giving Freddy leather pants is alright, but it does take away from the grimy and workman in the basement feel of the other films. Now let's talk about the glove.
Real blades that grew out of his fingertips.
It was a whole different design, and I thought it was kind of an interesting look.
What I found out from Robert was that the thumb was a little clumsy to work with when it had a blade on it.
This is a definer of the character as much as anything else. The new design is supposed to give a more organic feel, as if it's part of the body itself with the tendons and veins, etc. It looks great. Matter of fact, it looks awesome, but I don't think it's a better choice than the original glove. The first time I saw that glove in the opening of Elm Street 1, I was astonished and actually scared. I had never seen anything like it, and neither did the fans. This upgrade look and glove made sense, as this is a different version of Freddy, and of course it gives more distance from the lackluster sequels, but ultimately, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Fun fact, this quote-unquote bioengineered hand and glove that Freddy uses in the film, as opposed to the glove in the prior films, is actually derived from the artwork of the theatrical poster and video box covers of A Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984. But I suppose all of us as fans have to wonder, was this the Freddy that we wanted to see go on in the franchise, or were we glad that we got the regular Freddy back in Freddy vs. Jason? There was also a scene in the script that depicted a Robert Englund Freddy nightmare, and that was one thing I kind of wondered why they never did. The nightmare in the script had Robert stuck in a spider-like web, and Freddy was a giant spider, described as a giant black widow with the red symbol under the belly having red and green stripes. This was dropped because it didn't fit with the film's overall tone, but according to Englund, it was due to budget issues. I have to agree, it definitely didn't go with the tone, but I did miss the nightmare sequences that were very creative, so maybe they could have reworked it to make it match the tone that they were giving in the film, just a little bit more of a fantastical nature. Number 4, no kills, dreamscape. The death of Heather's husband largely came about due to concerns that Freddy simply wasn't killing enough people in the screenplay.
Oh, shit.
Exactly. There are no kills really to speak of. Julie's is the only standout, and it is a pale imitation of the OG. Chase's kill had no real creativity to it. The nightmare scenes or dreamscape didn't have anything special as far as visuals. There were creepy moments as Heather is dreaming, and most times she as well as the viewer is not sure of what is real. The hell world at the end had some creativity and gothic touches, to be fair, and it's the only standout of the film. I think it would have been more effective if Heather had a nightmare that brought some of the grounded dreamscape imagery of the original Elm Street, something like the bathtub scene. It's so simple but yet creative as hell. Also, showing Dylan or Julie in a nightmare, it's very curious why that wasn't done. The scene where Freddy tries to swallow Dylan whole is similar to the scene in Nightmare 3 where the Freddy snake tries to swallow Kristen whole, but we all know which version of this is better. On the DVD commentary, Wes Craven explained that in the hospital scene when Dylan vomits black slime at Heather, there were more scenes filmed with Dylan's eyes turned solid blood red with 3,000 flies coming out of his mouth, filling the whole room and with a screeching growl. He himself wasn't sure why it was never used in the movie.
And you blew it! You blew it.
When Dylan crosses traffic to get home later in the film, Freddy was supposed to drive a car called the Freddy-mobile with 4 giant razor blades on the front, kicking off sparks, and was going to try to run the little boy down, but the Freddy-mobile was cut for being too expensive to make. It also sounds really silly. Number 5, finale and fallout. Heather traveling to the hell world to save Dylan by sliding under the covers was a stroke of genius. This parallel to the mind of a child and his fear of what's under the covers worked. The battle with Freddy and the continued Hansel and Gretel theme was a very nice touch by Wes. I would have loved more face-to-face between Nancy and Freddy, but was satisfied enough with what we got.
And then he yanks me by the hair and he throws me up against the wall, and if you'll notice, right next to my head it says lust. And at that point, you know, Nancy and Freddy's relationship has always had a sexual component.
Am I gonna kiss her or gut her? You know, there had to be that fine line there.
New Nightmare was unfortunately the lowest grossing movie in the Nightmare franchise, with a worldwide box office of only $19.7 million, just $3 million less than the gross of The Dream Child. Despite this, the movie holds the second highest critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes with 79%, only behind the original movie's 95%. Many fans and critics found it to be a breath of fresh and creative air into a franchise that needed it. Ultimately, it didn't save the franchise, as many would hope. It was a band-aid that held off a deathly wound until Freddy vs. Jason came along. Wes tried to do what he thought was best, and credit had to be given for the end result, considering all the baggage that was built up over 6 previous entries.
It was a very pleasant film. I remember how fun it was and what a sense of love there was in the set. Not to be mushy, but just everybody really liked each other and was having a great time.
But at the end of the day, New Nightmare shocked us and wrapped us in a nasty slime that was worse than when Heather got attacked by Freddy's tongue. and we as fans must deal with it in our own way. You have to ask yourself, was this the best way to try to continue the Elm Street franchise? What would you have done differently from Wes Craven? Was there another way to do it? These are questions that only you can answer. As always, this video is not here to make you love New Nightmare or to hate it. It's simply a discussion to highlight the history and aspects of it, good or bad, with you, the viewer. So what do you think? Are you a fan of New Nightmare? If so, tell us why. If not, let's discuss why you hate Wes Craven's New Nightmare. If you haven't hit the like button for more content, please do. If you're not subscribed to the Night Watch Zone, this is the time to do it and become part of this fantastic movie community where you'll never love and talk about movies the same. If you like this video, check out my other Why You Hate videos and other content, including live streams here, and I'll see you there. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you are the Night Watch. Peace.